Welcome back to Savvy Seniors. I'm Mary Dilley, and we're being joined today by Sarah Sunnucks, our favorite funeral director from Smith's Funeral Home. So Sarah, we were talking about family dynamics, and I talked about my parents and how, that was kind of a kerfuffle. So tell us about the different family dynamics and some of the challenges that you come across and how you help people.
For sure. So obviously death is an emotional time, and it's a time when people they don't know how to handle things properly, and so they are really looking to the person, what their wishes were, what their thoughts were. And sometimes if that conversation hasn't happened, there's assumptions, right? So one thing I've kind of seen is, we have a lot of people who have power of attorney. Power of attorney is, the person who's helping you pay your bills, the person who's helping you with your medical decisions, right. And especially kind of later in life, they might be more and more involved, right? But your power of attorney might be a little bit more newer than your will. Right?
Okay.
And so when someone passes away, that power of attorney ends. And a lot of people don't realize that. And so we get a lot of calls at the funeral home from the power of attorney. And so we'll have to say, well, I'm sorry, you're actually not the person in charge. Who is on the will? And so a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's my brother, or that's this other person, not me.
Right.
And so it can be really hard for that person to understand that, yes, you've helped that person this whole time, but now you're done with them legally, basically. Right. And so whoever's on the will then is the person in charge. And so that can be a shock sometimes to families, because I have seen, the daughter's the power of attorney. She's been helping mom this whole time in nursing and, decisions at the nursing home and things like that. But then the brother's the executor, and so the brother might not be as involved. He might not be as, understanding what's happening, and he might not have had a conversation with mom about that funeral plan or what they wanted.
And he might live out of the country.
That's right. A lot of people are out of province, out of country. And so it can be kind of a trying time, because here's this kind of breakdown. Yeah. Right? And so I always want to, when I sit with people to prearrange, we talk about your will. Who is your executor? Do they know they're your executor?
Right.
Is this going to make sense? Are they living in the States? Are they going to have the time to do everything that has to happen? An executor legally does have a lot of things they have to do. One is they have to, provide services for where your body's going to go, or if it's going to be cremation or burial, funeral plans. They also have to apply for probate if there's a probate that has to happen. Right. They have to sell your home. They have to do a whole bunch of things. And then whatever's in the will, they do have to follow when it comes to distribution of funds. The last couple of months, we've had some family members who their will wasn't looked at recently. So, we had one where they had 3 executors, the main and then 2 backups. Yep. All 3 people were deceased, right? And so there's this new common law spouse. She doesn't have any legal rights. So the first thing she had to do was go to a lawyer. And what a trying time, right? To have all those things happen. And for us, legally, we have to follow next of kin law. We have to figure out who that person is. Yeah. And it becomes quite a headache for people, and we're just trying to help, right? Yeah. But unfortunately, it can become quite emotional.
Why is it that people don't want to do their wills?
I think they think that if they have a will, then A, they might die, which, you will at some point, everyone will. Yeah. But B, also that they don't need a will because they don't have an estate. Because when we say estate, that word kind of brings up an estate, a house, right? But a will actually determines who your voice is for you after you're gone. So regardless as if you have a house, if you have a car, if you have all these things, you need to have someone be your voice, right? And so we need to know who your voice is gonna be. And it might not be your next of kin, depending on the situation. Right. So if you die without a will, there's something called next of kin law. And so we have to follow next of kin. So for example, there was this is a sad situation, but this gentleman was divorced and his adult child was 19. Okay. So he is considered the legal next of kin. This person didn't have parents in the country, didn't have any siblings in the country, just an ex-wife and some children.
Right.
So this 19-year-old had to make end-of-life decisions at the hospital. He had to call the funeral home for transfer of his dad to our care, and then he had to make decisions. So of course his mom's there to help him, but she's legally not allowed to make those decisions because she's divorced.
Right.
Right? And so that's where that next to kin law is kind of difficult. So that's kind of an extreme situation, but definitely that 19-year-old should not have been in charge of all those decisions. And if the gentleman had a will, even though he didn't have a home, he didn't have a car, he didn't have anything, he just needed someone to be the voice.
Yeah, and to take care of his body. Wow. Yeah, it amazes me that people have, a house and 3 kids, and I'll say to them, do you have a will? No. Oh my God, who's going to make the decision about your kids when you're not here?
And it's hard to make that decision for yourself, right? Who do I want to choose to raise my 5 kids?
Yeah.
Well, not a lot of people are going to take that on.
Yeah, I'm not. Thanks anyway. Thanks for asking.
Yep, but I do have to make that decision because I don't want anyone else to make that decision, right? And so that's the motivation. You don't want anyone else to have to make your decisions for you. You want to make them.
Yeah, I know. I got to a point in my life where my kids were old enough where I said, "Oh, I don't have to worry about that anymore." Yeah, and now they'd be fine on their own.
For sure.
Okay.
The other problem too with some family dynamics is a lot of people are moving into Canada from other countries. They have a lot of people are traveling. We travel quite a bit. You just got back from Florida, right?
Yes.
So this kind of movement of family dynamics also is difficult for families. What if someone dies overseas? What if someone dies out of province? What if the executor's out of province? There's a lot of that happens, and it can be quite overwhelming as well. Some people just don't know what to do. Or if we have someone in our care and they want to go home, right? They want to be shipped back to their country. They want to be cremated or taken back to their country and buried. There's a lot of those kind of questions that happen. I actually was just on the phone with someone at Service Ontario. He needed a special document to bury his wife in another country. It was cremated remains, but he didn't realize that he needed a special document. Service Ontario didn't know what document it was that he needed, so he called me on the cell phone, and I talked to Service Ontario and told them what form he needed. Okay. His flight is next week. So for him to get this form, it's very quick for him to have to get it done. And so he was kind of in an emergency. Now, he's just a friend of mine. He didn't happen to use our funeral home. Yeah. But if he had used our funeral home, we would have been able to get that document right away from him.
And are you not allowed to take ashes on a plane?
There is documentation you have to take, and it depends on what countries you're going to. However, some people take a small portion, right? So that small portion might be for scattering. That can be different, but you do need a few documentations that just so that they don't open your bag. That's what I always say.